Welcome back to Partners Dog School. As we wrap up the final days with our camp dog Wyatt, we are super excited with his progress and overcoming the training, and will be delighted to show his owners Art and Ethan when they come by for his transition day.
I want you guys to get on some of that hands-on work. Biggest thing we really had to kind of deal with, and I kind of described it last week to you guys, is I kind of dealt with two different versions of Wyatt. I had the not confident, stubborn, reactive Wyatt. And then, I got, probably the side that you guys also see with, the big attachment. It was probably around, week 1 when I was doing his, email demo. And I know we've already talked about that a little bit, but something just switched in his head and he connected the dots. And then since then, he's had a very big bond with me. And again, I think, yes, with you, I think he's felt a lot of these feelings, but I think he's gone through so much of his life, just everything being so negative. He hates the world, he hates this, that, and it's just made him feel so uncomfortable and anxious. And again, his mindset, just created a lot of his issues. So in coming into a building with so many new dogs, new people, new this, he was so just anxious and overwhelmed at first. And then once it kind of just switched, he's like, well, wait, I feel good. I'm happy. I'm this, I'm that. I'm energetic. I'm ready to train. I'm ready to do this. I don't think he understood how to contain those feelings. I think he understood how to suppress the old Wyatt, but didn't know how to suppress the positive side of things. So, again, through the reactivity, him being super uncomfortable, just very flinchy, fighting pressure, being out stubborn and this and that, I had to find a way to gain control with that dog. And then once he turned into the dog that he is now, I had to find another way to regain control through all of this just aloofness, the silliness, the excitement. So that's what a lot of what, since the last time you guys saw him, what I have worked on. Again, I think he did a phenomenal job last week. A little excitement, but he did, 10 times better than I was expecting him to. Seeing the owners for the second time, can cause a little bit more excitement, understanding last time you saw him, you left him again. So again, I don't kind of want that being in his mindset now. So just like last week, I want to assess him, just see, what his demeanor is going to be, what kind of control I'm going to have. And then, I'll let you guys have your moment, just like last week, say hello. And then briefly, again, I don't need to spend an hour on it like I did last week, going over all the obedience, but just, kind of freshen your guys' mind up. I'll do, 15, 20 minutes just going over all his commands. And then, like I said, I want today to be focused on you guys getting your hands-on work with him. I am dealing with a different distraction than you guys, obviously. Again, you're not going to have to work them through, oh my gosh, we haven't seen, our dog or dog hasn't seen us in 2-3 weeks. But again, everything I am doing with him, when he kind of gets in this just silly, amped up, whether it's positive energy or whether it's negative energy, just this simple heel work, the sits and downs, the commands that we have taught him, over the last several weeks is how we gain our control. Hey, sit. Yes. Because again, you see just instantly how his demeanor changes when he is in a sit versus if I kind of just let him do his thing, that's what I'm going to get right there. So again, these very simple, easy commands to complete with our dog is how we gain control over him. I want to teach you guys a proper intro because, whether we're introducing him to a new person, trying to make it a positive experience, or we're working on jumping, energy, whatever it is, I want to gain control first because it's that same thing. If I just, all right, cool, go do your thing, dude. He's gonna jump all over you. He's gonna lick. He's gonna do this. He's gonna be overly excited and this and that. So by me gaining control, I can not 100%, stop, the chance of him jumping on you. I'm actually anticipating him to do it right now, but it's a good start. Instead of just, all right, go see your people, and, he's in that free mindset, that's what he is gonna bring over to you guys. So if I can gain control of this situation first, calm him down a little bit, Wyatt, sit, good. That's going to help him transfer some of this control and calm energy over to the greeting. Now, like I said, doing this isn't gonna 100% stop the chance of him jumping, but now going forward, it's my job currently as his trainer to micromanage and, correct his jumping. So when I release him, I'm gonna let him say hello. I still have a hold on his leash. So if he kind of jumps, I'm able to just give him slight corrections out, but it's that same thing going forward. Again, so when you're doing these controlled, proper intros, having your leash in your hand is how you stop any issue that he would be doing. Good boy, Wyatt. Good, Wyatt. Sit. Good boy. Yes. Wyatt. Hey. Oh, good boy. Free. And you're free to say hello to him now. Yeah. So now everything's in my hands. Good boy. Come on, Wyatt. Good. I'm okay with that right now. So right now, we're gonna do what I call as a proper handoff. So I'm gonna have you get on my right-hand side right here. Because again, I'm gonna help you get away from this. So just grab the leash, and we're just gonna kind of start slowly walking. So again, obviously, his energy is towards you, but me, as his trainer, I am controlling this right now. You know, I'm anticipating as soon as I let go of this leash and you take over, he's gonna jump all over you, he's not gonna walk, he's not gonna listen to you, which is okay. We're exactly what we're working on right now. But, you know, I want at least to transfer over a little bit control. I know, you know, he could prove me wrong, but I don't think he's going to. He's gonna lose control once you start walking with him. There you go, nice. There you go, beautiful, beautiful. And again, just keep walking around the room with him. Because again, each repetition, each little circle you'll do, you'll notice you gain more control. So the last time you tried that turn, he was much more, you know, giving you a hard time trying to go say hello. There you go, nice, there you go, there you go. But again, now you kind of see, you know, this is a lot more beneficial than the no, Wyatt, off, sit, no, stop pulling, this and that. Because again, that's just gonna overly freak out this dog. And again, put him in the mindset we don't want him to be in right now. Both Art and Ethan really soaked in all of the information from Wyatt's transition, and I could tell the two of them were 100% ready to take on his training at home. Before heading out, we discussed a few more at-home protocols to ensure Wyatt's success with his siblings when back in the household, and also went over a few more manners protocols, including thresholds. We wrapped up with Wyatt's diploma, and I look forward to seeing them at next week's follow-up. But yeah, you know, I know we've kind of discussed over the last week a few of his issues, so again, definitely things that I want to address with you guys today. But aside from that, how's he been doing? You know, more positives, other negatives?
There has been improvements. Like,
awesome.
For example, we ended up getting a crate. We had a kennel, but he barely fit, so we got an actual crate kind of like what you had. We ordered one of those types of beds. It just got here like 2 days ago, and when he's in the crate, he calms down overall.
Awesome.
So we're able to keep him confined when we go to work. He's able to stay there.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So the fact that we're able to keep it in a location where it's confined, but he doesn't like go crazy.
He doesn't try to get out
He
of
actually
it.
falls asleep. So that's an improvement. So it helps us a lot, like where he doesn't trash the place, you know. I would say he listens to it maybe 30% of the time.
Yeah.
Whereas me, it's like 70% of the time.
Okay.
So there's a huge issue where he doesn't really take to him that much.
Well, the thing is that so he won't listen to my commands, but he wants to snuggle, cuddle, be in my lap, and all that. But he doesn't want to listen to commands or anything. So it's kind of like, okay, so you want to like be lovey-dovey, but you don't want to listen to him.
And you know, that's where it gets tricky in his mindset, because again, you have those two different sides of that relationship, which, you know, I love that side, you know, he wants to bond and snuggle, you know, it's not this anxiety anymore. But again, you know, he needs to understand through that relationship, you know, he still needs to be held accountable when he's working with you. You know, it's not just, okay, I'm going to work with Chase, I'm going to work with Art, and, you know, maybe a couple other people I'm comfortable with. But you, all I want out of you is love. Like, no, you need to totally listen to me. So we can address that today. Okay. But I want to, you know, kind of go over and reinforce his out a little bit with you guys. But again, you know, if he's comfortable enough, again, you know, not necessarily just with the leash on, you know, kind of dragging it while he's playing, but, you know, you guys actually holding on to the leash. You know, the second, you know, he tries to hump or, you know, that play gets over escalated, and I don't want to do it right now because he's not doing anything. But again, a good solid kind of correction out, and then remove him out of there, and then yes, good boy, and then kind of take him back in, let him go interact again. You know, once this gets escalated, you know, Wyatt, no, out, and then again, kind of repetitions like that way. But again, make it a decent correction. Again, you don't have to, you know, yank on it, but something where instead of kind of pulling him out of there, so he's not necessarily just gonna feed into that pressure, but, you know, I would snap, get the good, well-timed correction, and then kind of guide him out of there. So you guys said you just got a place bed today or yesterday?
Like 2 days ago.
Okay. Have you guys tried place with him at all yet?
Well, I've tried it more so. He somewhat does it, but I can't get him to stay. The stays are still pretty weak with him.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured that was going to be an issue.
He was a little confused by it though, because we also got the cushion that can go on top of it.
Okay.
So I don't know if he kind of disassociates a little bit with that and decides to get off.
For duration, focus on it when he's a little bit more chilled out. So again, that's, I like to work on the dog's duration. Maybe if I'm doing like the camp class, duration and a stay is gonna be one of the very last things that I work on, because if you try to work that duration, as soon as the 8 to 10 dogs walk in there, it's gonna be a lot of energy. Dogs aren't gonna focus. So again, do it when he's a little bit more focused, maybe away from distractions. After you guys did, a 20, 15-minute training session, he's a little bit more tired, and then that's when I would kind of start focusing on that duration. So I just walked out of my follow-up with Wyatt, and for the most part, he's actually been doing good for his first week at home. Owners, over that week, I communicated with them, definitely addressed that they were having some struggles, which I expected. Wyatt, in my opinion, was one of the more tough dogs that I have trained. So, me as a trainer with a lot of experience, I knew he was going to go home and give his owners a little bit difficult of a time. But, it was at least, problems that I would want him to have, over his biggest issues. What he came in for was just a lot of, confidence issues. He was very reactive, very territorial, just lit the owners up, he's strangers, this and that. So, we definitely got that under control, and that was my biggest concern, when he was going home, just making sure, he brought the confidence home that he adapted here, back into that home lifestyle, wasn't gonna resort back to being, aggressive, reactive, not this confident, just this anxious dog. So, I think we saw the success there. But again, they were having a couple issues, just kind of managing his energy around their little Chihuahua. He was just being very pushy, would just get a little anxious, trying to hump them. So in this follow-up today, I kind of just showed them how to reinforce that out. They purchased an e-collar from us, so we did a lot of e-collar work, just continued going over that as well. And then, one other thing that they were struggling with was just the consistency with his commands with the owner, Ethan. From what they were saying, he was doing a lot better with Art, their owner, which I kind of expected, before we even started this thing. I can tell that Wyatt definitely took a lot better to Art. He was definitely more close to him, a lot more comfortable, so he kind of already had that relationship established with him where Wyatt was going to understand, and take to the control and the obedience that he was putting down on him. But with Ethan, he was giving Ethan a little bit of a harder time. So, I just kind of went over how to take him back to the basics, just reshape things, add value to themselves. I discussed a lot on how to, just work him through that stubbornness, just take the time out of your day, address it, just give him that 15 minutes, do a little training session with him. But, we also talked a lot on how to add value. So, I think over the hour in that follow-up, they started connecting the dots. I saw them improving, both the owners and Wyatt. So it was a very good thing to see. And then, we're sending him home now officially. So, he's finally done with me, but, he still has his pet parenting classes that he's going to come to, just staying consistent with all of that training. But, going forward, definitely want to stay in touch with both Arthur and Ethan, just making sure that they're not struggling with anything. I want them to know that I have their back through all of this. But, like I said, just from the dog that Wyatt was coming in, just a genetic mess, very just anxious, reactive, sort of aggressive dog. But, then I just saw him kind of connect the dots one day and just turn into the dog that I always saw the potential of him being. And then, now he just needs to understand transitioning all of that home. But overall, I'm very, very happy with how he went. Both Wyatt did a fantastic job. I think Ethan and Art are starting to kind of connect the dots, really see that the dog they have and just understand, all the protocols and management that they need to reinforce going home. But all in all, I think the three of them are going to be very, very successful going forward.
Learning for two, your dog and you, PartnersDogs.com.